means to give you your name. And so I was given mine after working a season as a scare actor at Universal Studios in Hollywood for Halloween Horror Nights. I was one of the zombies that got dressed up and jump out and scare you. Because I had slept in my car almost every night because the traffic was so bad I didn't want to drive back. I would just sleep there and stay there. And so thus the other queens gave me my name, Lavinia Karr. And thus a star was born. But I wasn't always this glamorous, and I wasn't always a drag queen. I was born, Raymond Zachary, in Huntington Beach, California, on September 24th, 1990 business. I went to Jewish private school 5 days a week, Sunday school on Sundays, Hebrew school on Wednesdays, and I was singing in the junior choir at the temple on Tuesdays. So needless to say, there was no fear of me celebrating Christmas anytime soon. But my love of Judaism and text and Jewish music led me to become Temple Bat Yam's first ever cantorial apprentice. I began not only learning trope and davening skills, but also nusach and modes and chazonis. I was conducting services by myself before my bar mitzvah, and whenever the cantor was sick, I was their go-to sub. I was invited to sing as a guest in my first ever cantorial concert at the age of 9. That was the path I was on. Now, fast forward, I graduated high school and went to the American Jewish University as a Jewish studies major, emphasizing in Jewish music. I suddenly found myself teaching at one of the largest congregations in North America, Stephen Wise Temple in Los Angeles, taking graduate level Hebrew with rabbinical students, and planning and producing my first cantorial recital my sophomore year. I love being on the bima. But I also have another love, the stage. You see, not only was I in the junior choir at Temple, but I also did youth theater all around the community. And I finally realized that center stage was the only safe place I could be. In a childhood that was often filled with bullies and nightmares, center stage was safe, underneath a spotlight. Because if you think about it, if you're being chased down the street by an axe murderer, and you run into a theater and onto center stage, they're not gonna follow you. My senior year of high school, I lied about my age to get into the audition room for a production of Hairspray at our community college. Now, don't get me wrong, lying does not often pay off, and Judaism has a lot to say about it. But in this case, it did pay off, and I booked the lead. I was going to play Edna Turnblad, the role that was coveted by drag queens everywhere, because as I'm sure you know, it's traditionally played by a man in drag. And I'll never forget the first time they presented me with my rehearsal shoes. Because when you're doing a production that size, you get rehearsal clothes like corsets and petticoats, just for spatial awareness purposes. I stood up just a little bit taller. And they said, you need to practice walking in heels. And little did they know I'd been borrowing my mom's forever until my feet outgrew hers. But as soon as I stepped into those shoes, I suddenly channeled every single Jewish woman that ever walked through a synagogue door. Edna Turnblad was supposed to be a mother from Baltimore in 1962. My Edna was from Brooklyn in 1940. And this was the first time I was ever able to blend my worlds of bima and stage together. I've since gone on to create not one, but 2 drag personas. Miss Lavinia Karr, who you see here before you tonight, performs in nightclubs and stages, and, well, really any place that'll let her through the front door, like bar mitzvahs and weddings. But I also have a beloved another character, Aunt Shirley. She is a 1950s housewife from Brooklyn with an insatiable appetite for gossip. She has led community Passover Seders, yes, of course, Purim. Aunt Shirley's also officiated a wedding and done many bar mitzvahs. She even has a cooking show on YouTube, which I'll encourage you all to look up after Shabbat, Hugs and Knishes from Aunt Shirley's Kitchen, where I share with you our family recipes and, of course, try to convince you of a story from 30 years ago about a relative you've never heard of. So that's me, in a nutshell. That's my path. It's my journey in life, is to combine the bima and the stage and find a balance for both. How can I create room in my life to have both successfully and create meaning and happiness along the way? I will never forget the night that a woman came up to me after a performance. She told me that her husband had unfortunately died earlier that week. And her sister had already bought tickets to the show and wanted to force her out of the house, so she came. She told me she hadn't smiled or laughed since his passing, but I was able to give her a 2-hour vacation before she had to re-enter a world of heartbreak and turmoil that awaited her outside the theater. We stayed in touch, and just a little while later, I was asked to sing and officiate at her husband's tombstone unveiling. That is how I create meaning through drag. Now that's all good and well, but some of you are still probably asking yourselves, what the heck is drag to begin with? And you're not alone. A lot of people don't know or don't understand or don't know the questions to ask. So I'll try and explain. In its most basic definition, drag is an art form. It's described as a person, usually male, who uses clothing and makeup to imitate and often exaggerate the female gender signifiers for entertainment purposes. The technical term is a gender illusionist. And of course, drag got its start in ancient Greece, where men performed on stage as women because it was illegal for women to appear on stage themselves. And that law continued in through Shakespearean Renaissance theatrical productions. In about the 18th and 19th century, pantomime began to emerge in Europe, and then drag continued to grow into vaudeville, on Broadway, and into queer spaces and nightclubs all around the world until we see what we know as drag today. But drag is so much more than an art form. It's a mentality behind an action. We are all drag queens. As our Lord and Savior RuPaul once said, we are all born naked, and everything else is drag. We are all born naked, and everything else is drag. When you get up in the morning and you put on your clothes, you are putting on your drag. Your drag is the armor that you put on to go into battle. Your drag helps you to face the challenges of the day. Your drag is also an outward message to those around you. If you put on scrubs in the morning, you're telling someone just by your drag that you're a nurse and you can save their life. Or if you wake up in the morning and you put on a pair of coveralls, you're telling someone that I can fix your car and have you safely on the road again soon. My particular drag tonight, and most nights when I'm performing, yes, includes a wig and a gown and heels and a corset and lots and lots and lots of duct tape and bobby pins. However, I put this on to make people smile and laugh. Cantor Hutchings and I, and all the other clergy around the world, take a moment before we conduct any service and we put on our drag. This signifies to you that this is a safe space to worship and a safe space for you to connect, and whatever that means to you. Now, you can have different kinds of drag. While you may have your scrubs on is your nurse drag, and you come home and put on your mom drag to make dinner. Or if you're wearing those coveralls at the auto shop, you run to the baseball field afterwards and put on your coaching drag. Tonight, I appear before you as the glamorous Miss Lavinia Karr. But once the wig comes off and the corset gets unlaced, I'm Raymond Zachary. My preferred pronouns are they, them, and I'm a cantorial soloist. I currently work at 5 synagogues, and I've appeared on over 20 bimas across the country. I have a background in classical music and musical theater, and I'm a proud member of the Guild of Temple Musicians in association with the American Conference of Cantors. I also work very closely with the klezmer band, Mostly Kosher, which I am proud and honored to be a part of. I love finding my balance in these two worlds of bima and stage. Now, the big question, of course, is what does Judaism have to say about all of this? Well, let's start at the source, shall we? The Torah, right? The Torah has many examples of drag, whether or not we even notice them. Aside from the fact that every single one of our Bible stories centers around a man wearing a dress. Think about it. Thank you. Our first actual example of drag in the Torah is the story of Joseph. Right? We all know he's given a coat by his father to signify his favoritism. It made Joseph stand out from his brothers, just as drag makes you stand out in your own mind. When Joseph put on his coat, he had that feeling that made him stand a little bit taller. The feeling I felt the night they handed me my rehearsal shoes. And you all know that feeling when you put on that one pair of jeans that fits you just like right there, right? And just holds everything in. That feeling. That's drag. But Joseph was discriminated against by his brothers, just as drag queens have been discriminated against by various communities. And of course, he was then thrown into a pit and sold into slavery, and we know the rest of the story. If you don't, there's a musical with a very shirtless Donny Osmond that I recommend. Now, our Torah also tells us in 3 different Torah portions about Aaron, the high priest in the days of the temple, who not only what he should wear, but how he should wear it and what it should be made of. I personally think this is a total diva move on Aaron's part. Like he somehow got Moses to talk to God and be like, hey, I need more time in my dressing room before I go to the temple. It's like a whole looks thing. Look, why does he need 3 parshas? We don't know. But if that's not a drag queen, I don't know what is. Our Jewish sages and our traditions teach us about the principle of chidur mitzvah, beautifying the mitzvah. The concept of chidur mitzvah is derived from Rabbi Ishmael's comment on the verse, "This is my God, and I will glorify him," in Exodus 15:2. What he means here is that we should glorify God in the actions that we do and in the commandments that we follow. Jewish law is known for being extremely particular about its specifications, right? How big our sukkahs have to be, how much wine a kiddush cup has to hold, how to tie knots on the end of a scarf. It's very particular, but what it doesn't talk about is how things should look. Now, we are commanded to make things beautiful as we worship God. Because we're all created b'tselem Elohim, in the image of God, we should make ourselves look just as beautiful as the things that surround us. Now, of course, it goes without saying that every person has their own idea, thought, and vision about what beauty is. However, I invite you to look at the things around you in your home that you surround yourself with. See how you can beautify them. I bet you didn't even know that every single time you walk into this sanctuary, you are in the presence of 7 drag queens. 7 drag queens. The Torah scrolls that sit in the ark behind me are some of the richest and most knowledgeable and most valuable drag queens I have ever seen. So much so that we dress them in beautiful velvet gowns with gorgeous necklaces and crowns, and yes, they too have corsets to hold them together. But they are full of, actually I'm gonna rewind because this is an important sentence. How many of you guys knew that your new Torah scroll, the one you just dedicated, has rhinestones on it? As every good drag queen should, right? Right? We are all just like the Torah scrolls herself, full of stories and histories and lessons to be learned. So why should we not dress ourselves like a drag queen? You come into this world perfect, in the image of God, and everything else is drag. What is your drag? It may change from day to day or from moment to moment, but I assure you, it is beautiful. That was supposed to be the end of my sermon, but I'm going to add something more. As I'm sure you're all aware, drag queens have become a rather hot topic in today's political climate. I am not a fan of preaching politics from the Bima, so I'm not going to. This is a sanctuary where we're supposed to leave our troubles of the outside world outside. And Shabbat, of course, is a time of peace. And I think we can all agree, no matter where your politics fall, that's not a very peaceful conversation. However, I will invite you all who would like to stay after the Oneg. Cantor Hutchins and I will be hosting a talk back where we can talk about politics. So you can ask me about the process of drag, or drag culture, or what I ate for dinner. You can ask me anything. I would like to leave you with a thought. What affects one affects many. My ability to stand on this bima tonight and look as I do is the work of about a dozen people. From hairstylists to wig designers to cosmetologists and estheticians and seamstresses and costume designers, and so many more. The exclusivity that drag queens are facing today is not only affecting my livelihood and the livelihood of my colleagues, but also to everyone who contributes to this beautiful art form we call drag. This discrimination and lack of inclusivity is not meant only to target drag queens, but to slam the door in the face of the transgender community, as well as the LGBT community at large. Of course, I encourage you all to please do your own research and form your own opinions. I was invited here tonight by Cantor Hutchings to act as a symbol that Congregation Ner Tamid is a warm, welcoming, and loving place to all, no matter what your drag is. And I want to say thank you for having the love and the bravery for inviting me here tonight, and I'm happy and honored to act as that symbol. One thing I love most about my work as a cantorial soloist is that when Jews fall on hard times, our tradition offers us so many songs of hope. We've been through hard times before, we know how to handle them. And one song in particular comes to mind about the LGBT community. There are many things that the LGBT and Jewish communities have in common. Their love, their support of people in need, and their intensity when celebrating joy. But we also, unfortunately, share a past of hatred, discrimination, and ignorant violence. So tonight I would like to offer a song as a prayer of hope for a brighter future. This song became an anthem for the LGBTQIA community during the AIDS crisis and has since been used worldwide as a message of unity and hope for a brighter future. It reminds us from the Jewish perspective that no matter where you are, God is right next to you. And if that's not your belief, it reminds you that your fellow person is right next to you, because oftentimes they're one and the same.